Hello, people of Mars. It's good to be back. This is Ven, and I welcome you to the M.O.C Spotlight, where we take apart what you build. Today we'll be taking a look at a life-size Compsognathus M.O.C, or Compsognathus, if that's how you like to pronounce it. I'll just do the Jurassic Park thing and call it a compy throughout the video. Anyway, this M.O.C was created and posted on our message boards by one member named Artakha. And before I go any further, let me go ahead and just talk about my method of reviewing, which involves a point system that is based on 3 fundamental attributes: the overall appearance of the M.O.C, the build of the M.O.C itself, and the concept and ideas behind the M.O.C's creation. Each quality will mount up to 5 points each, leading up to a final score that will be determined at the end of the episode. And remember, this is all my opinion. So anyway, to get started, I've been keeping an eye out on this M.O.C for a while because it's apparently a work in progress. And it's been a work in progress for a couple of months since it's been posted. So I just kind of waited a little bit just to see how much progress would be done, and then I decided, no, I'm just going to go ahead and look at it. Because this thing is very, very impressive. First off, I'm going to say how impressed I am with its size. Because while size isn't exactly everything when it comes to creation, I'm really impressed that Artakha managed to fit so much into this creation, and it shows. Like, there's even a function that is featured on this M.O.C, and I'll go more in depth on that a little later when I start talking about the build. Anyway, it goes without saying that at first glance this M.O.C looks astounding, but there are a few quirks here and there. Starting from the legs and working our way up, we can see that the legs can get a bit gappy, especially towards the thigh area. This is a little off-putting, but it looks like that could be easily fixed. Another thing that comes off as a bit awkward is the tail. While it looks fine when it's resting, you can see that when it's lifted, it looks kinda almost like some dude just went and stepped on it and then broke it into 3 different fractures or something. Like, tails don't bend that way, at least mine doesn't. The torso of this M.O.C actually looks pretty fine, nice and sturdy looking, and probably the most solid aspect of this M.O.C. And that's not saying that the arms or the head don't look good or anything. That's just saying that those don't come off as solidified as the torso does, to me. Especially since the neck actually does have a couple of gaps in it. I understand why, given that it's part of a function that was actually built into the M.O.C. And with that said, it actually looks pretty good. Let's look at these tiny arms. And by tiny, I mean tiny compared to the rest of the M.O.C. I actually enjoy how these look, and I think the use of the Inika legs for the forearms was a pretty good idea. They look really nice here. Also, hurrah for individual fingers movement and such. Finally, moving upward, we take a look at the head, and man, this head is quite neat. I really enjoy the custom design of this head. It really does the job, well done. It fits with the rest of the M.O.C, and it looks like it's reference material. Only thing is that lower jaw hanging and dangling down looks a bit odd in some of these pictures. But speaking of reference material, this M.O.C does a brilliant job of looking like a compy. But of course, nowadays, if you try to look for a compy in real life, you're just gonna find a skeleton. Nobody knows what a compy looks like. It died out like 65 million years ago. The only other references out there are the typical media portrayals of dinosaurs like Jurassic Park and pictures from kids' books or something. Another thing that I think was fairly well done about this M.O.C is the color scheme. As you can see, there's tan everywhere on this M.O.C. There's also bits of green. Mata green, Green Lantern green, dark green, mostly dark green actually. So there's a bunch of different greens being mixed in here, but it doesn't look too bad. I think the fact that the dark green is the more dominant color really helps. It looks pretty good alongside that tan, and the bright green areas, while they kind of stick out and they don't really fit as well, they aren't necessarily an eyesore. Now with all that said, I want to go ahead and start talking about the build, because right off the bat, the best thing about this build is the function. Artakha managed to successfully implement a function where if you press down on a certain portion of the compy's back, his head will snap forward and open its mouth And then if you let go of the lever, whatever it is on his back, his mouth will snap shut. See, the feat of incorporating a function into your own creation is already cool as is. That's already a plus. But the dude made such a big creation and he still managed to get a working function in there and work around it so that the M.O.C still looks good in the end. I think that's very impressive. I think that adds another plus. Now the only downside to this that I can see is that it makes the neck very stiff and it limits articulation. It doesn't look like this compy is going to be turning his head left or right, like at any point, anytime soon, but then again, this is a work in progress, so maybe I'll be surprised in the future. Now as for the construction of the entirety of this M.O.C, I'd say everything looks fairly good, everything looks fairly solid. Like I mentioned earlier, I did notice that there are a few gaps in the legs, and I don't know if that will hinder stability of this M.O.C. Also, the fact that in some of these pictures the legs look really spindly towards the ankles. Not sure how well those could support it back then. I think he fixed it because in some other of these pictures the legs look a bit more fleshed out. I don't know, it looks like the compy could stand up fairly well on its own in just about all of these pictures. I think what really helps is the tail. As awkward as it looks, we can clearly see that it acts as a sort of balance, as the M.O.C can just rest on it with no problem. However, it does make me curious as to how far this M.O.C can go in posability, because in most of these pictures the M.O.C is just kind of standing upright in the same pose. I wonder if it could actually hunch over and do the classic dinosaur running pose that we've seen from like velociraptors in Jurassic Park, or even in most cases the way that skeletons are posed in museums and such. Maybe I missed a picture where this M.O.C actually does that, but I would like to see that. And if that picture has been taken, let me see it. I really want to see it. A couple of final notes on this M.O.C build. I just want to say that I really enjoy all the ideas executed into the clever design of this M.O.C. Highlights, of course, being the head and the neck construction. That turned out really nicely. And, of course, the torso, because of how solid it looks. Now let's talk about concepts for a bit. So, of course, the big idea behind this M.O.C is that it's supposed to be a Compsognathus, which, if you don't know, is a tiny dinosaur that went extinct along with the rest of them. You might recognize them if you ever watched The Lost World or Jurassic Park 3, where representations of these little buggers were actually shown in a couple of scenes. And as I mentioned earlier, since these creatures no longer exist, aside from being skeletons, the only sources of reference that this guy had were the skeletons, of course, for anatomy, and then visual guesses of what these creatures look like. Also, with doing a little bit of reading up, you'll find out that compies were actually just about 1 meter in length, which is about 3.3 feet long. And this M.O.C turned out to be about 4 feet long from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. So it's actually just about the right size, but a little bit bigger. So I think that's a bit more impressive. It looks just about anatomically correct, and I would say that the colors are probably inspired by Jurassic Park or something, because I do see a bit of a resemblance. I think that's all I have to say on that matter, so let's go ahead and move on to the final scores. In terms of appearance, this M.O.C receives a 4 out of 5. Again, I'm really impressed with this M.O.C, but I think it could use a bit more fleshing out. After all, it is a work in progress, so there probably is still room for a lot of improvement, and I'm kind of hoping that the legs look less spindly and more filled in, that the tail doesn't look so awkward, etc, etc. The build of this M.O.C receives a 4 out of 5. That function is freaking awesome. And overall, this M.O.C appears quite stable, has pretty well built structure. I still kind of question the legs and the tail, the way those were built. Not so sure how to feel about that. And then concepts receive a 4.5 out of 5. It looks to me as though Artakha has pretty much reached his goal of making a M.O.C the size of a real compy and that appears like a real compy. but of course with a little bit of work, and he does claim this to be a work in progress, so that's kind of inevitable that there will be more work put into this mock. I think he can really perfect its appearance and making it look more like a bionicalized compy. Yes, you heard it here, folks. I came up with a new term, bionicalized. You better use it, and if you don't, then it'll probably be dropped and never used again, and we'll all just forget about it. You know it's true. It always happens. And so, to wrap up the video, the final score of this mock would be 12.5 out of 15. Great job, Artakha. This is a really great mock, and I can't wait to see it when it's actually 100% finished. If it isn't 100% finished already, I don't know, it looks really good. But I could definitely see where there is room for improvement. So again, looking forward to that whenever you can. Keep it up. This is Ven, and thank you all for watching the video. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe. Check out the message boards if you want me to possibly recognize your creation. Then post it on our message boards in the LEGO Creations category. I go on the message boards almost all the time. Well, not for the last couple of weeks because I've been very busy, but now that finals are over, I will be doing so a lot more often. So, be sure to check that out for a higher possibility in appearing in the mock spotlight. See you all next time.